This book is essentially a 40-year retrospective of various kinds of explorations that I've done of looking at the intersection of human nature and the rest of nature. You know, it's a life work. It's a retrospective. It's autobiographical in its way. Now, I'm known as an image maker, but this book is about ideas and words as much as it is about photographs. And so as the show goes on here, I'm going to show you a lot of pictures without a huge amount of commentary in between. And at times I'm going to break away and read some of the passages from the book, because the way I put the ideas in the book through the words that got fixed in print, I think is probably better than what I can do just talking live here all the time. One thing I want to emphasize, since we are, for the most part, I think, with this audience in our local community, I'm known as a scientist to a very significant degree, but honestly, I've seen my work as principally that of an artist, in the sense that I'm responding to the world around me, to my historical moment here, and I'm really not trying to illuminate scientific principles, but the work that I'm doing is grounded on the knowledge that I have in the background about what science is saying about how the world works and what's happening in our time. The work is a symbolic interpretation of these issues. In many cases, it's also at times documentary realism, trying to look in a very clear-eyed fashion at exactly what's happening in the world around us. Now, so we're on the same page. What is the Anthropocene? I think many of you know what that is. But just in case, let's all get up to speed with the idea that the Anthropocene is the relatively recent new name that the earth sciences have given our epoch of geologic history. And the basic premise is that humanity is such a powerful force in the natural system that we are altering the world around us. And that's not to say that we're the most powerful force in the world. A lot of classical environmental thinking has worked very hard for many, many decades to try and emphasize to us that we are not the center of creation. And I get that, and I understand that, and I believe that we are not the center of creation. But the premise of the Anthropocene, as I've come to understand it, is that we are one of many elements within the natural system. And I think the Anthropocene idea is incredibly valuable, worthwhile, and important because of that understanding. We are not separate from nature. We are in and of nature. I'll talk about that more a little bit later on. A lot of us have heard of a lot of ancient concepts suggesting that earth and air and fire and water are the basic elements of life on Earth. And I think that those are very important elements. But what a lot of the ancient principles missed in whatever tradition is that biologic life is a key element in that system. Somehow earth, air, fire, and water doesn't catch it all, does it? Doesn't catch plants and animals. And it certainly doesn't catch the human element, which is why I focused on the idea of the human element in this book. And then finally, why does that subtitle say a time capsule? How is this book a time capsule? Well, it's a time capsule because I see this compilation of work from a couple of different temporal perspectives. One is I'm looking backwards at time as the world has been changing around us and as we humans have been changing the world around us. I see it as a time capsule that speaks to the present, to us right here, right now, saying, hey, you see what's happened? Do you see what's happening? Do you start to think about what might be happening in the future? But even more importantly than the present and the past, I see these pictures in a way as being a message in a bottle to the people of the future, that I'm putting a record of this time in between the covers of this book to say to the people of the future, hey, this is what was happening at the latter part of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st century. And here I, as a photographer, have produced a story about that maybe will be useful to you 50 or 100 or 200 years from now when you look back at this era of time and wonder what exactly happened. What were those people thinking of? What were they doing? What were they seeing? So there it is. That's why it's a time capsule. And finally, there will be upsetting things in this series in some places. But I see it all ultimately as being kind of a love letter. It's a love letter to us. It's a love letter to all of nature. And I have strived very hard for all these decades to not always look at pleasant, happy, lovely, as I say to my colleagues, roses and moonbeams stories, but to also sometimes look at the hard stories and the hard images and the hard situations and try and find the aesthetic interest and the aesthetic pleasure, if not the beauty, in difficult circumstances so that you can be engaged visually somehow and looking at things that aren't necessarily pretty sunsets and sunrises. So here we go. Here's the title of the show. That's the cover of the book. And lest I forget, this is a big beast of a book. Here is a copy of the thing. It weighs 20 pounds. It's a gigantic object. If we got paid in this field for pictures by the pound, I'd be a rich man, but that's not what happens. In any case, I hope you'll visit the Boulder Bookstore and consider this book for your collection. Now, I've had an incredible life as a photographer. It's always been fabulously interesting. And I've found myself to be something of a chameleon. I've had to adapt to a lot of different situations, to respond to different circumstances in which I had to shoot. And this little time-lapse video that shows you some of the costumes I've had to adapt over the years gives you some hint of how diverse all of this has actually been. So I start out sometimes as a regular guy with or without a sport coat, going to climbing gear, mountaineering gear, river gear, volcano gear, and so on. Sometimes you have to get dressed up, and sometimes you have to do what needs to be done, and sometimes it's underwater. And it's always great, always fascinating. Been loads and loads of fun. I pinch myself sometimes when I think about all the great things I've gotten to see and do over the years. This is in a canyon in Greenland where a river of meltwater is ripping through the ice surface. And this is on a far less beautiful day. This is maybe the other extreme. This is at the end of a very long day of photographing in a wildfire in California. So, as I said, you know, I like the beautiful in nature, and that's really where my career started. And I still, even to this day, enjoy making images of beautiful things, but it's not always like that. But here's the beauty. This is the joy. This stuff is in the book just as much as some of the other kinds of images are in here. And I am going to go fairly quickly through the pictures because there's a lot I'd like to share with you. This is in a cenote, an underground lake in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. San Andreas Fault, seen from a helicopter many thousands of feet above the Earth's surface. And this really brings us first to the idea of tectonics. A lot of us have heard about something called plate tectonics. It's the idea that the crust of the Earth is sliding around, different pieces of rock are colliding into each other, making earthquakes and earthquake faults, building mountains, volcanoes, mid-ocean islands like the Hawaiian Islands, and tectonics. Plate tectonics is the name that geology has given to that idea. Volcanoes, fantastic stuff. It's been fabulously fun photographing some of these volcanic eruptions, at least when I haven't almost gotten myself munched. Love this stuff. Great, great, great fun. Plate tectonics. But as I said already, the human element is a very powerful element alongside these natural forces. So it dawned on me a few years ago that I should think of humanity under a term of human tectonics, human force. And much of the rest of the show will be devoted to unpacking the idea of human tectonics. I've had to leave out some of the chapters in the book for the sake of brevity here, but here's a very good, clear example of it. It's at the famous Carrara marble quarry in Italy, where humans have been nibbling away at this mountainside of rock for well over 2,000 years. Many of the great sculptures of the world, especially from the Italian sculptors, Michelangelo and Bernini, the architect, came from this quarry. And here we go, chopping into a mountainside, shaping rock, turning it into something else, human tectonics. And not too far from our backyard is another form of human tectonics. This is out by Moab, Utah, a potash mine along the Colorado River, reshaping the land. I, by the way, started out very early in life, well, not early in life, but in my 20s, studying geomorphology, the study of how the Earth's surface is sculpted. And I've been shocked to discover that a lot of that early thinking and conditioning about shaping the Earth has come into this work over the years in all these different ways. Human tectonics. This is up in Leadville at the Climax molybdenum mine. And as I've said, the challenge is to find the beauty, to find this incredible aesthetic, geometric beauty in the midst of something that actually isn't very good. They're contaminating that watershed up there. Down in southern Arizona, another tailings pond with the town of miners that lives alongside it. Here's another form of human tectonics that maybe we don't think about too much, but which is really important to the world of today, housing development. In housing development and counterpoint to agriculture. Agriculture is generally considered to have been perhaps the earliest form of human tectonics once they really got going. Human tectonics are connected, of course, with the use of fire and with hunting. But it was really when agriculture started that the Anthropocene is thought to have begun approximately 10,000 years ago. And so housing developments and agriculture together. I've been really fascinated, of course, with climate change. I've been working on climate change for almost 20 years, trying to look at it and think about it in different ways. We'll see more about that later. But one of the things that really hit me hard is that we talk about climate change, a thing that's relatively abstract. Climate is just an accumulation of weather events over the years and decades and centuries. But air, the actual material of air, is the substance in which climate change happens, in which weather change happens, in which we breathe all the time, 15 or 20 times a minute. We're always breathing in this stuff called air. Now, I'm not an astronaut, and so I've never gotten to go out into outer space and look at the world the way the astronauts do. But through a fantastic chain of circumstances, I got a chance to put a camera on a weather balloon that we sent up from Rocky Flats. My friend Patrick Cullis gave me the opportunity to do that. And so I attached a couple of cameras to a weather balloon, and we sent it up into the atmosphere. And this balloon reached 96,000 feet. And it gave my surrogate eyes, the camera, the chance to look down on that very thin lens of atmosphere. And for the first time in my life, I felt this deep, visceral experiential connection between my little ground-based eyes and outer space. It only took half an hour for that balloon to go from Rocky Flats up to where outer space and the thin prism of air looked like that. You can just see the air envelope there and the blue alongside the surface of the Earth. And guess what city that is down there? That's Denver. And Boulder is up to the top right corner of the picture, right underneath where my photograph is right now. Some of this work was shot in Colorado, some in California, some in the Northwest Territories in Canada, some in Oregon. The fire dragon. I've really come to see these big wildfires as being informed kind of in a mythical, symbolic sense by a dragon-like force. School bus. And not incidentally, this is after the 2014? Well, in any case, after the 4 Mile Canyon fire. And this is up on the Gold Hill Road, school bus. And this is up off the Sunshine Canyon Road. I could have done portraits of firefighters for 5 years and not run out of interesting faces. 19-year-old young woman from Northern California who worked on a crew of 19 male firefighters. And this young woman worked harder than any of them. She just busted her chops to make sure that she carried more than her weight. She was really tough. Kerrigan Ferreira. And this was last year in Boulder. This is out in front of my house, looking north as the Calwood fire erupted that one Saturday. Was it Saturday afternoon? Pretty sure it was a Saturday afternoon. I could not believe it. I was innocently eating a sandwich and looked out the window, and there was this huge blue-black cloud overhead. And I ran, grabbed my camera and shot this picture, 2-page picture in the book. The hour is fleeting. The facts of life on Earth are clear, and I submit them for candid consideration. Human tectonics are changing the nature of nature. We depend on the stability of the fundamental elements of the world. An imbalance in the human element leads to an imbalance in the other elements. People are the only element that can choose to restore balance. No boundary separates people from nature. In damaging nature, we are damaging ourselves. In protecting nature, we are protecting ourselves. No law or decree, no religion or tradition gives us the right to immolate the inheritance of the ages. True patriotism protects spacious skies and purple mountains, golden valleys and diamond deserts, from pole to gleaming pole and sea to shining sea. Against the tyranny of denial and the oppression of indifference, we must prevail and see anew the relationship between human nature and the rest of nature. We, the people, have an inalienable right, not just to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but to clean air, clean water, and the security of a stable atmosphere. Our survival demands it, and our children deserve it. And that would be the end. Thank you.